Okay, I'm recording.
Okay. Folks, my name is Donn. I'm a retired Navy captain with a little history going back years with Renee. And I initially want to say that I'm honored and pleased that Renee had asked me to participate in this really significant ceremony and event. Both my wife and I, well, Susie and I had fully intended to be in Washington with you, and unfortunately, for health reasons, we're unable to do that. But it's where I am, is at the base of the aerological tower up here on Fort Island, the Pearl Harbor Naval Aviation Museum, right up here. And that's the way this Fort Island airfield looked prior to December 7th, 1941. My tie here is I'm a founding director of this Pearl Harbor Naval Aviation Museum. And it's what I've done to try to stay out of trouble pretty much since I retired. With that, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to talk about the relationship that Renee and I had and how we happened to come together. 57 years ago, I was a fresh ensign coming out of OCS in Newport, Rhode Island, and I route to my first duty station on an LST, home ported in Yokosuka, Japan. 27 years later, Renee was a fresh ensign coming out of Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island, en route to her first duty station at our naval base in Yokosuka, Japan, Fleet Activities Yokosuka. By that time, 27 years had gone by, and I had risen to the rank of captain and had just relieved as the commanding officer of Fleet Activities Yokosuka, Japan. And with that, that's how I initially met Renee. It goes back to one morning, 27 years ago, when the Chief Staff Officer, Renee, that'd be Commander Chair Donn, was in giving me the morning brief and mentioned that we had orders on a new officer come in. I said, all right, CSO, what do you think? I said, well, what are we going to do with her? I said, well, the orders have, what are we going to do with him? And the orders have her going out to our housing area in Nagishi, a housing area in Yokohama, the last one we have in Yokohama, at the base of the Imperial Japanese horse racing track, which is the remnants of which are still there. And the Chief Staff allowed that we really don't need her up there, and I agreed. So what do you think? He said, well, I checked with the department heads, and Brad Letts says that he thinks you could use her out in ordnance. He needs another officer. So I'm thinking, young female, with those bomb meters and gunners mates out there, Mustangs. So you really believe that? She said, well, it can't hurt. He said, it's a good outfit. I said, it's a terrific outfit. Let's give it a shot. And that was about it. Renee reported in. She came into the office. I greeted her. So welcome aboard and told her she was going out to ordnance. And a couple of months later, I'm sitting in my office and Lieutenant Letts, the officer in charge out there, comes in and we're discussing some of the situations out there, which were not necessarily serious, but pretty routine. And finally, he said, Captain, do you remember Ensign Finch? And I said, yeah. He said, how's she doing? And I thought, oh my God, what kind of problems do I have now with a woman out there in Cairo in an ammunition depot? And he said, well, I want to tell you that it was an outstanding assignment. She's terrific. She's bright as hell, hard worker, and she's really been good for us out there. And she's made a real addition. And I said, she's done that in 2 months, Brad? And he said, yes, sir, and she's getting better. I said, well, that's not exactly what I expected you to say, and I'm really pleased you did. The time went on from there. I began to pay a little closer with what Renee was doing. And it's what became pretty obvious that every time there was an ammunition handling evolution going on out there, Renee was part of it. And all kinds of weather. If the ammunition barge was underway, you would go to the piers off the anchorage to service the ships. Renee was on it as an overseeing of evolution. And quite frankly, if you think about this, it was a darn important thing for her to do. Taro, our Yokosuka ammunition depot, was built by the Imperial Japanese Navy back in the early 20th century. And in essence, it was built into a series of bunkers in the side of the mountains, the hills out there. And when they built it, of course, it was mostly rice paddies. It was very agriculture. Now we're 27 years ago, and actually 30 years ago now, and it had really built up. Now, should there have been an accident out of the Naval Ammunition Depot, it would have taken out a large portion of Yokosuka, and probably pretty much of Yokohama too, since it's right on the border. Safety was really important. And Renee was a good person to assign out there in those circumstances. So she was doing a good job, and not only was she doing a good job out there in ordnance, but she became more and more active in the base and community affairs. And as a result, when things out of the ordinary came up, she never hesitated to volunteer to help where she could. And one instance in particular I'd like to share with you, Commander of Naval Forces Japan, Rear Admiral, had a thing for parades. And he wanted to do a sunset parade in honor of the mayor of Yokosuka, a gentleman, by the way, that I didn't get along particularly well with, but that wasn't important, I guess. And kind of like 8th and I in the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C. So I said, well, that might be a pretty good idea. And I didn't have it put my top 5,000, but that didn't seem to convince him. And we would do a combination of the Marines. I had a Marine barracks, about 120 Marines, as a matter of fact, on the base. And let's face it, amongst the other things that Marines do that are real good, they march. Well, I had a lot of sailors working for me too. I had port ops, I had security, I had the brig, I had MWR, I had the mess halls. So I had a lot of sailors, but I was pretty sure none of them had marched since boot camp. And therein lies the problem. I also had to schedule the 7th Fleet Band because you can't have a parade without a band. How are we going to put this together? Well, if we were going to do it, we're not going to embarrass ourselves. And via a series of discussions, we decided, well, Renee Finch is really the one we want to do this. And there's 3 reasons for that. One is because she was a junior officer on the staff, and nobody else was volunteering. 2, because she was exceedingly conscientious and had really proven in a lot of ways that she could just pull it off. And 3, and maybe this was most important, in my estimation, I guess the chief staff agreed with this too. She'd do it, she'd say yes, and she'd enter into it with the proper amount of enthusiasm. Well, it takes a lot of enthusiasm to take a company of sailors that haven't marched in the last 6 years, teach them how to march, integrate them with the Marines, and teach them how to do that to music. I'll make a long story. I've made a long story pretty long already, but she did it. This came off, and I was there to witness it. I was a reviewing officer along with the mayor and the admiral. And I'm sure the mayor was honored, the admiral was pleased, and quite frankly, I was a combination of relieved and terrifically proud of what Renee had done and the way she pulled this off. This was no small thing. Another instance, completely divorced from that, and I've never quite understood it, is why Renee and Mike, her husband, decided that it was a good idea that they repel off the roof, the 6th deck of the fire station out by the heliport. To this day, I'm not too sure why that was important, but I'll tell you, and I think she has a picture to prove it. She did. She and Mike did it. They trained for it, and it was really kind of spectacular. It kind of tells you something about the way, if it could be done, if it should be done, if it looked like it would be fun, if it looked like it would be educational, if she could have learned something advanced. She jumped at it. Another example of that is a Spanish sailing ship came into Tokyo, and I was invited up to receive the reception and everything, and just wasn't going to be able to make it. And I knew that Renee had a lot of language proficiency, and I thought at that juncture, it turns out I was right, that she might have had a minor or major in Spanish. And it turns out she did. It turns out that she and Mike went up there represented, and the feedback I got from the embassy up there in Tokyo was absolutely spectacular. It was kind of words to the effect, well, you can't show up, you can always send Renee. And that is, I guess, a kind of a forerunner of things she got into later in her career. There were other instances that she took part in, but her performance out in ordnance and what she'd done around the base led us to the point about 1.5 years, 2 years into a tour where the harbor movements officer, crusty old 30-year W4 bosun, was retiring, a good friend as a matter of fact, still is. And the harbor movements officer in any naval station, and specifically in Fleet Activities Yokosuka, is really an important job. We've got 8 ships home ported, including the Midway, the Blue Ridge 7th Fleet flagship, a couple of cruisers, destroyers, 2 frigates, and all the transitors, deployed ships that come in, plus the submarines. And the harbor movements officer controls traffic in the harbor, plus 4 tugboats and then a dozen pusher boats and the Japanese ship crews that run them, and all the maintenance involved with the harbor craft. this is pretty much what we were asking her, a young JG at the time, to take over. Her reputation is such that everybody seemed to agree that was probably a pretty good idea, including this crusty old 30-year warrant that's retiring. Thought he'll pay for what it's worth. His name is Dan Duncan, and he's continued to follow Renee's career. So she did it, and she did it well, as a matter of fact. And she's dealing with pretty successful and senior naval officers. In fact, everybody she dealt with was two or three, 4 grades pay grade senior to her. And there's a lot of captains were pretty sure where their ship ought to be moored or berth, and Renee didn't always agree with that. But there was always a reason for it, and she always prevailed. In one particular instance, and she never complained, she just got the job done, but she came to my office and she said, "Captain," she said, "you know, the Bunker Hill just came in." I said, "Yes, I know that, Renee. Is there a problem?" She said, "Well, I don't think so, but the ops boss came over, the operations officer for Capt Marfiak, Tom Marfiak was the CO of Bunker Hill, and allowed that we boarded outboard of the Mobile Bay, another cruiser at the Harbor Master Pier, and this captain was senior and would like to be inboard, like the pier side." And I said, "Well, I'm pretty sure you have a good reason to moor outboard, maybe because the Mobile Bay was already there." What was his plan? His plan was he dressed out the Mobile Bay and put the Bunker Hill there and put it. And I said, and he said his CO wanted that. Well, she didn't exactly say that, but she said the CO was senior and he wanted to be pier side. So it sounds to me like that's what he's saying. I said, "Okay, Renee, you did the right thing, no doubt." Yeah, and she said, "Well," I said, "I don't want anybody to get in trouble." I said, "No, I just appreciate the heads up. If I'm going to get a phone call, I appreciate the background." And I thought about it. I said, "You know, I know Tom Murphy. That doesn't sound like him. I think he knows Renee, too." So I picked up the phone and I called him. I said, "Tom," I said, "You got a problem with your berth?" He said, "No, I asked." And I said, "Well," I said, "apparently your ops boss thought that you ought to go pier side." You know, and I mentioned that to him. He said there was any question. He said, "When's the Mobile Bay getting underway? And we're going to have to schedule our work schedules having to go around that because it's going to be disruptive for you to down. Unless she's going to be here longer than we are." I said, "Well, that turns out to be the case. You're doing out before she is." He said, "Donn," he said, "you know, I expect you to call and say, have a drink in the L Club after work today. Is that a problem?" And I said, "No, I just thought I'd pass that on to you." He said, "Well, I know Renee." He said, "I think I'll have a talk to the ops boss." I said, "Well, she was concerned. She didn't want to see anybody get in trouble." And she said, "Well, then we won't tell her." But that was the kind of reputation she had on the waterfront, and getting along well with senior officers and moving it. Things were really going well, and I guess now it's my tour. It's my final tour in the Navy, her first one, is coming to an end. I had one more hurdle to pass, to overcome, and that was I wanted Renee to become 1110 and a ship driver. I wanted her to become a service line officer. And she knew that. Chief Staff wanted, at that time the Chief Staff was a Mustang Chief Bosun mate, lieutenant commander. And we tried to get Renee to, and she came into OCS because she wanted this to lead to naval aviation. She was second. She put in a request to become a pilot at 1310, and they turned her down to offer her 1320. A year went by, and she came again. She said, "Capt," she said, "this is really what I still want to do." And I said, "I'd like to put in for pilot training, but if they'll just offer me 1320 and naval flight officer." She said, I would like to do that. I said, "There's no way I can keep you here, keep you as 1110. The base was going to lose her anyway. The tour was coming to an end. And her mind was made up. So what I remember was saying, "Well, if I have any influence at all, maybe this will make a difference." So I said, "All right, send your package to me again." I saw the endorsement I put on it a year ago, a very good endorsement. And I took the same thing and I penned a note on it. And I said and I sent it via Dave Bennett, Admiral Bennett, who was SERPAC, Admiral Kahn, who was AirPAC, and then on to the detailer in the Bureau. And I'd known both those men. I'd been fortunate to serve with them and play golf with them for several years. And on it I put a kind of personal note. And in essence, as I remember that personal note, it was, "This young officer is far and away the best junior officer in Naval Base Yokosuka." And well, will be successful in any endeavor up to and including the aviation that you might choose, and I strongly recommend that you be selected for a pilot. Well, I got it half right. They picked her up for NFO again, and quite frankly, I left and retired. Shortly thereafter, Renee left to go to flight school, and now we're together 27 years later. With that, Renee, I'd like to, as you and Mike finish up your first tour, your final tour in the Navy, and enter into a different life from naval officer, I guess, to assuming the role as mom and dad under these circumstances. Susie and I want to wish you both all the success in the future, fair winds and following seas, and thanks for everything you've done for the Navy and for specifically what you did for me in Japan 27 years ago. Thank you. That's about 10-15